In this episode, our guest is Jarel Threat. Based in Texas, Jarel is an illustrator and concept artist. He's a classically trained oil painter and digital artist focusing on sci-fi fantasy publishing, and most prominently, he is an artist for the mega popular Magic the Gathering franchise. Join us as we sit down with our very special guest, Jarel Threat, for a roundtable conversation where we discuss his artistic beginnings, how to handle professional setbacks, career successes, and some more technical aspects of his painting process today on Painted in Color. All right. No second takes. Let's do this for realsies. This part's being it. I'm adding this in there. I don't care. Welcome to another episode of Painted in Color. I'm your co-host, Eric Wilkerson. I'm joined by Lauren Brown and Mia Araujo. Today, we are speaking to our special guest, Jarel Threat.
Hello.
And we are so happy to have you on. I love your stuff, and I wanted to just get right into it.
All right, let's go.
Because we love to talk about art. We love to talk about the business of this stuff. So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started. More specifically, I'll ask you like your creative influences growing up. Like
Oh, okay.
can you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. So when I was growing up, my whole thing was anime. So I grew up on Toonami ma the majority of my life. And so I watched, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, uh, Rurouni Kenshin, just like all the classic anime. So when I was growing up, all I did was draw anime stuff. Specifically Dragon Ball Z. I have like dozens and dozens of sketchbooks of just drawing fan art of Dragon Ball Z, all the way from 10 years old all the way till 18 when I went off to art school. And then when I went off to art school, I had to, well, I was originally going to go for animation because I wanted to be an anime artist. I wanted to do that. But instead, I didn't do the application correctly. So I had to go into illustration and then transfer over. But I love illustration so much, I ended up not transferring over. So then in my sophomore year, I took a history of illustration class. And because up until that point, I was kind of like in limbo land. Because back then, this was 2009. Back then, they didn't want you to do any anime stuff at all. It was forbidden in art school. So I was kind of like fumbling around trying to figure out what kind of artist I was going to be. And so the history of illustration, I got introduced to Frank Frazetta. And up till then, when I was in art school, I didn't go to the library at all. But after that class, I went straight to the library and checked out every single Frazetta book that they had. And so I was really consumed by that initially. Then I got into Brahm, and then went back to the old masters a little bit, like Rubens. And one thing that I was trying to find closer to my senior year was, like no one was looking like me. Like no one looked like me. I was the only really one of very few Black kids who actually did the art, let alone in illustration. So I was hard pressed to find someone. But the first one I found was JP Target, the concept artist. And I was like, oh, I can do this. So he was a pretty big influence on me going about to enter into the real world, essentially. And I just kept going with the Frazetta imagery. After school, I got really into uh magic artist. So this was back when pre-Instagram and all that kind of stuff, before that took off. So it was on Blogspot, a lot of that stuff. So a lot of the illustrators like Chris Ron, Tyler Jacobson, uh I believe Steve Bellenden, I think Donato had one. Like you had one, Eric, because I remember yours. And you were like the first one where I was like, oh, there's a black artist that does exactly what I want to do. So that gave me a whole lot of confidence. This was like 2013, 2014 when I found you. And I was like, oh, now I got real hype and all that kind of stuff. Cause I was like, oh yeah, I feel like I can actually do this for real, for real. And so I got like a lot of different influences over the years. And then I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to do smart school in 2000 and I believe 18. And so I was able to learn from Donato as well. So that was a pretty big influence. And I think some of that influence still carries through in some of the pieces that I do, particularly when I do like hands and stuff like that. And so, it's been like a huge amalgamation of influences over the years. There are certain things I take still from anime. Sometimes how I compose things, because I see things still with a little bit of an animation mindset. I have to freeze frame stuff still in my head.
So that's how your brain works. You're
Yeah, I see it in a movie.
okay.
Yeah,
Mm.
I see it in a movie, and then I have to freeze frame it, and then I can shift it in my head and find the right spot. And that usually it happens more with action scenes when I do have to do action scenes or multi-figure scenes now. Less so when it's like stationary figures and stuff like that. But yeah, the anime influence is still there. Uh, Learning from the old masters, uh, like Rubens and Rembrandt. Uh, Someone I really like is Lord Leighton.
Oh yeah.
I took quite a bit from him, some Bouguereau in there too. So I think like a lot of artists, it's like a huge amalgamation. We're just all like a hodgepodge of different influences, and they kind of just, certain things stick, other things don't, and we kind of just meld it all together at some point. So yeah.
Yeah. It was the same for me when I was in high school. I was really into anime, and I think I had just seen Akira, and it just like changed my life, and
Oh yeah, that's a great.
Macross and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, Matt Cross, yeah. Yeah, I love Akira as well. Wait, so you were in anime too, Eric, but you're the professor that tells all the students not to draw anime. What happened there? I call you out.
On the spot. But I tell students that you can draw however you want as long as you understand your fundamentals.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Because if you don't understand human anatomy, then you are a copy of a copy of a copy of somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's not really a style, that's just you copying somebody. But if you understand what you're doing and then you are making a conscious choice to draw in an anime look, that then becomes your style. That is a choice you're making. But it's hard getting that across to.
That's valid. That's absolutely valid.
They're just like, why don't you just let me draw one piece and leave me alone? And I'm like, all right, fine.
Jarel, did you get yelled at when you were in school for drawing like anime stuff before you actually found like what you wanted to do from like illustration history?
Not really. What I was too scared to actually draw anime anymore, because a lot of the people around me, like the other students, they didn't draw that way at all. So
Yeah.
they was like, and they were like more figurative, and they already knew a lot of like I think the thing is like, at least at the school I went to, a lot of them were older than me. So I was one of the few that were, 18. Like a lot of them were like in their 20s already, like early 20s. So they had gone to other schools and then came to Ringling. So for me, I was like, oh, I had to put this stuff away really fast, or else like I'm never really gonna be as good as them. Because I didn't want to. I think there was a competitiveness in me because I kind of look at art like a sport still. Because I played sports as a kid and stuff like that, so I get competitive, and I
Yeah.
don't want to be the worst of anything. So when I saw that they were so much better than me, I'm like, yeah, this anime stuff ain't gonna cut it with them. So I'm gonna have to set it aside and really learn how to draw and figure this stuff out. So I'm not like the last in the class type thing. So
So Jarrell, let me ask you. So you went to Ringling College of Art and Design. That's
yep,
out in Florida.
yep.
Okay. So did they not have a cartooning department?
No, the closest that they had was animation, and they had game art, but that wasn't really cartooning. That was more like closer to doing stuff for video games specifically. But there was no like straight up cartoon. And also the type of cartoon that I wanted to do, I was a real big fan of 2D. And their stuff was they were teaching pretty much just 3D. I mean, I think the sophomore year, like freshman and sophomore year, they would do 2D, but then they would switch. I didn't have any interest in doing 3D at all. So, like, aside from that, yeah, illustration department didn't really have like a specific cartooning department. There were certain teachers that had more of a cartoony style, but if you didn't get them or like learn specifically from them, then you kind of just trying to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to the SCAD experience, though. At SCAD, we actually did have a sequential art department. So there was a place for that, but the illustration department was kind of similar to yours, where most people were either figurative or really like almost that abstract New York Time, not New York Times, the New York Post type style, where it's just like very um editorial. So I also felt like I was stuck in like between different realms without quite knowing where to go. Because I had a similar background to you where I grew up on Toonami and I just adored everything
Yeah.
that they had on that program. It was fantastic. It was a great era. Um, and so I found out that I also had a different path, but mine was completely different from yours because I didn't go realistic. I went into basically biz dev. So so it's interesting to see like where different like anime kids have ended up once their schooling has gotten to them. So I was just like it's kind of fascinating to me because I was looking at your portfolio. I was like, I would have never known that you had come from an anime background as well.
Yeah,
But now
yeah.
that I'm
And
looking at it closer, I can see it. I can see the influence.
it's very small. You have to know exactly what you're looking for, but it's definitely still there. It's more in my sketching, I think. I still take a lot from the sketch stuff when I don't use a lot of reference. There's still a lot of that anime-ish type style. Even though it's still more realistic than it used to be, it still has like oh, that's more of a cartoon-ish type style to it. So it's still there. It's just I hide it very well now,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah, definitely. But it's still there. There's a drama to it that's still there. So I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it works really well. Yeah.
Appreciate
So
it.
then when did you graduate Ringling?
2012.
2012. Okay. So after you graduated, where did you like how like did you feel like ready to be a professional illustrator or what was that like for
Oh no. Oh no. Uh-uh. Not even in the least bit. And I think that's really my only gripe about going to art school is that I paid all this money and I'm like, I'm still not good enough. And it wasn't from lack of trying or anything like that, but it's just like I was not ready. I had to grind for another 8 years after art school before I actually got in to the business. And so it was I was doing a lot of different stuff. Uh I did like a helicopter design stuff. I worked at a print shop. I did a little bit of like comic work, Like none of it paid well, obviously.
Nope.
Yeah, and they never pay well. I think I did like before I got the Magic gig, I did a card game where I did like 70 cards, and I did it like in the span of it was a little over a year.
Oh my
I
God.
did it.
Jesus.
And I think I only got paid maybe like 30 bucks, 40 bucks per card, something like that. I mean, it was a great experience only because I got so fast
Yeah.
by doing that in that short amount of time. But it's just, yeah, it was a whole lot of that, you know, just working different day jobs and stuff like that, working accounts payable, worked at a print shop, did some teaching. It was just trying to figure it out and then trying to get my skills up at the same time because I had to figure out one of the things they didn't teach you, well, didn't teach me in art school or like people who came up with me was perspective. So I had to learn that. So there were a lot of fundamental gaps. Like they taught you how to make an illustration, but they had kind of skipped over a lot of the fundamentals. So I had to like kind of reverse it, like reverse engineer everything and really get my fundamentals down so I could actually make illustrations. Because I could make the process of illustration. That was easy, but it didn't look all that good. And or at least it wasn't good enough at the time. And so yeah, it was just a lot of work. I bought a whole lot of books, bought a whole lot of tutorials, like on Gumroad and just people's websites and stuff like that. I did mentorships, like I mentioned, I did Smart School. I did uh, schoolism. I did a few classes from there. So it was just a lot of learning and just trying to figure out also like what my voice was going to be, like my style and what was influencing me the most. What is it that I wanted to get across and trying to figure out how I was actually going to make a name where people would actually think my work was good and then get it in front of people. So that was a whole nother thing as well. I had focused, I think the first 7 years just doing the physical part, just getting good enough. And then, you know, after I thought that I was good enough, I started putting it out there a little bit. And then that's when things started to change because I had a real problem with like networking. I hated that back then. I really hated it. I didn't even like the word back then. That's just like I'm not a social person by nature. So I just wanted to do work. I don't want to talk to people. It's like, why do I have to talk to people? My job is to make paintings. So I had to get over that and learn that it's an important part and it's actually fun to do when you don't really look at it like networking. You're just having fun and talking to people. So it was it was quite a long journey after art school. It was not like people always say like it's not the destination, it's the journey. I'm like the journey sucks. Like, straight up, the journey sucks. It's necessary, but that doesn't mean that it's a happy experience. It was a terrible experience for me, but you do get to the other side at some point, which is something that I like to tell people. You just have to keep going. And I think having a there is no plan B type mentality really helped me because I didn't have one. After art school, I was like, if this don't work out, I'm just gonna be homeless and a bum. There's nothing else for me to do that I would want to do for a living. So I just took that mentality and then did the best I could. I had a whole lot of support. My parents were extremely supportive of what I was trying to do, and they saw how hard I was working. They were like concerned at points because I never went outside. I didn't socialize with people or like hang out with friends because I was always in the studio if I wasn't at my job. So it's just it was just the sweat equity really after art school. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people don't really understand the time commitment necessary to do this professionally.
You had to
And
be a maniac, really. Almost. Like it's not for like stable people. Almost. There's like an obsession you have to have towards it
Yeah.
where it's all you want to do. I remember like I would work 8 hours on the weekdays. I would come home and then I would work for like 4 hours. And then on the weekend, since I had all the time, I worked for like 13. And I did that for like almost the whole 8 years. And that's what it required, like just to churn out all the work. Yeah, but yeah, it's you have to really want it. And I think that's part of it is like you get out, but now you have to prove, is this really what you want to do? Because if you really don't want to do it, you will quit very, very easily. Once you figure out like who your competition is, because whether you like it or not, the people like you're competing with Donato. That's who you competing
Yeah.
against. If you want to get into fantasy and stuff like that, you're competing against Donato, you're competing against Dando Santos, against Eric Wilkerson, against
Yep.
me, against like everybody. Like the people you look up to are the people that you have to beat out in some shape or form in order to get, in order to get jobs. So it's like your work has to be at that level. And in order to get to that level, you have to put in a whole lot of work and sacrifice. Like you don't get to do all the things that you may want to do. I put off a whole lot of things just to get to the mountaintop, essentially, to get toward the finish line. Like I put relationships on hold. I said I wasn't going to get married until I got this. Like I didn't want, there were certain things I wasn't going to do until this happened. So I'm glad that I got here because I am married now. So I'm happy.
I was about to
And
say, are you just like partying nonstop now?
I wouldn't say it's partying nonstop, but it's more balanced than it used to be. I will say that. Way more balanced than it used to be. A lot healthier too. I will say that as well. But it's a part of it. It's just part of the journey that you have to go on in order to make it. But
Yeah. There's no
it's worth
instant
it to me.
gratification either. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that it's worth it at the end.
Yeah.
And
I was just gonna say real quick, it's I think the part of it too that's difficult for people who want instant gratification is all those years. And so I was just curious, aside from just not having a plan B, how did you get through those years of all that amount of work and still being like, my work isn't at the level I want it to be? How do you push through? Because I feel like there's a lot of people who would get really discouraged, like you said, really easily and quit.
I would say it's just the passion of it. Like I wanted to be great at it. I think that's really what it started with. I wanted to be one of the best to do it. Ultimately, I want to be one of the best in my generation. That's the ultimate goal. And so since I was looking at it from that perspective, it was like I that's just what I have to do. I think it's good to hear other artists as well. And that's something I used to do. I used to listen to interviews of other artists and listen to how they got it and listen to the work that they had to put in, the amount of hours. Some say that they were working 10 hours a day. I'm like, geez, like just painting? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, if that's what I have to do, then that's just what I'm going to have to do. Like I mirrored myself after the people I wanted to get to, that type of work ethic, that type of discipline to learn. I think that's also another part of it, to really fall in love with the craft of art. I think that helps tremendously when you just want to be better. You want your work to always like you're like chasing perfection, knowing that you'll never get there, but it's not the perfection that you're actually after. It's the chasing it. Like it's that part that really keeps you moving. Because even after you become a professional, it's not like it stops. You
Yeah.
know, like it keeps going because there's always like as good as you are to get to a professional level. Now that you here, you're gonna have to prove that you deserve to stay here.
Yeah.
So it's not like you work all these years and then you're good, but like understanding the long game of it as well is like it's the stages that you have to think about and just the long-term planning. And I think also having a good support system around you is essential. People who believe in you. Like I said, my parents were a huge part of that. Like they let me like move back in with them for a while I tried to get my stuff together. And if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be doing it because I'm not gonna lie, I almost quit like right before I had the breakthrough with magic. I was gonna quit because I had given 8 years to it, and I was just like, I have nothing else to give. I gave everything I had, and it's still not enough. And then literally like 2, 3 weeks later, I got the call from Magic. So it. I think it takes a toll on everybody at some point. But I tell people who are trying to get in, like you just have to when you get to a point where it is that you want to quit, that's usually about the time. And if you've been putting in years of work, it's not like you only put in like 6 months or a year and you find it hard, so you want to quit. I'm like, no, you've been putting in like 5 years or more and you've been really working at it and you feel like you have nothing left to give. That's usually when the turning point happens. So you just kind of have to like stick it out as best as you can and just whatever it is that you have to use to dig deep, do that. Cause it's a slog. It is a slog. A lot of people don't talk about it enough, but yeah, it wears on you mentally. But that's why I said it's like you have to have the planning, a good support system, a love for the craft. And I
Yeah.
think if you have those things, it makes the journey easier. Not easy, but easier.
Less painful at the very least.
Yeah, less
A
painful,
little
but
painful.
it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt.
Yeah. I wanted to ask during that journey while you were trying to get your big break, what was your main goal during that part of the journey? Was it magic or what were you looking towards on the horizon?
I actually wanted to be a book cover artist because
Mm,
that's what a lot of the artists that I looked up to were doing, like Donato, like Eric. You know, they were doing a lot of like book cover stuff, and that's the stuff that I admired the most. So that's really what I was trying to do. And so that's the reason why I did smart school. Well, I took 2 classes with Donato, but the second class I did with Donato was the AD visitor that session. And so my plan was to get some new pieces done during this session and then show them in the portfolio to her and hopefully get some work to finally make it happen. And it didn't happen.
What did she say?
She said my work was noodly.
noodly.
Yeah, like it was like it wasn't it was very nitpicky. Kind of like, it was detailed, but like detailed in the wrong way. I
Mm,
think so. It was kind of like that where like my values were good, the colors were good, but it's just there was too much going on. And so like I remember that because it crushed me because that's not what I was expecting at the time. Because I was like, no, this is really, really good work. But she was like, nah, she wasn't really feeling it like that. And so I was really, really bummed about it. And that's when I said I was gonna quit. So I was like, this is the best work I have ever done. And it's like, it's still not good enough. Like I don't have nothing else left to give. So I'm gonna give it up. And
So then you were gonna quit after that punch in the face, and then what, like a month later you're working for Magic?
it was actually, so I think the session ended on January 7th. I think it was the 7th. And then January 20th. And I remember the exact day because it was the day before my mom's birthday. It was January 20th. And then I got an email from Ovidio, one of the ADs at Magic, and just randomly out the blue. And he said, I saw your work and I think it would be perfect for Magic. I was like, what? I thought it was a joke. I didn't think it was a real email. I thought it was fake. And so I was looking at the email. I was like, I reread it like 3-4 times. So I was like, no, I'm misreading that. That can't be it. That can't be what he's writing me right now. And when I realized it was real, I was like flabbergasted. I was gone. I was like yelling and screaming and all that kind of stuff. I was so happy. And I even printed it out and I framed that email. And it's in my parents' house right now. But I asked him, how did you even find my work? Because I didn't send anything to them.
Wow.
So I didn't understand how they even found it. And he said, well, Donato gave me your name. And so I looked at your stuff and he was like, well, yeah, it's good enough. So yeah, let's just go ahead and hire him. But then I ran into Donato at a LuxCon, I think that following year, or it maybe been that same year. It was the same year. I walked up to him, introduced myself. This is the first time we had met in person. And I thanked him for it. And he was like, oh, that's not what I wanted to happen. I just gave him your name to keep a lookout for you. But they weren't supposed to hire you on the spot. And I was like, I'm glad you did.
Yeah, right. I'm sure glad that happens.
Yeah.
So my point is, to anybody watching or listening to this, is that you could be the biggest art director or perceived art director on the planet, but that's just their opinion.
Yeah.
Because you may not have been good enough but you were good enough for the biggest gaming company on the planet.
That's right.
So what's that tell you? Well, noodly, whatever. Be noodly. Continue being noodly, sir.
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean?
It is something else. It is something else. It's quite amazing. It's funny too because Lauren, what's her last name? Pinto.
Pinto.
She came. This was a LuxCon last year, and I was in the main show, so I was on the second floor. She came, like, looked at my stuff, be like, yeah, we should work together. Yes. And then she gave me her card and all that stuff. So it was like, so I'm good enough for book cover stuff now. Mm-hmm. And I actually have done some book covers now. So it's not like, so it's an interesting thing to go from, yeah, your work probably not good enough for that, to working for Magic, to now being good enough for book covers. So it's like a loop,
a roundabout thing.
Yeah.
I think it definitely also goes to show that, like, what Eric was saying, putting your work in front of just one art director can feel soul crushing if they don't receive it well. But it's really true that we are all looking for different things depending on what we are commissioning for. And if it's book covers, if it's Magic cards, if it's video games or animation, every art director in those departments will have different preferences, and just even amongst the same department. Because when I was at the illustration intensive this year, and you were there obviously, me and Sarah Wassel, the visiting AD from Wizards, we were talking about what we were observing in our and saying in our portfolio reviews, and even our feedback that we gave to artists was very different. So it just goes to show that it's like we're all individuals, we all have our own point of view. So really, one person's noodly might be another person's this is perfect for us. So it doesn't reflect. I think it's very important to get a diverse array of opinions on your work.
Yeah.
Jarel, I was at IllexCon back in 2018, and I had shown my work to Bain Publishing, and they tore me a new ass. Like I was showing them work for Activision and a bunch of other like larger companies, and they just like tore into it. Your anatomy is this, your perspective's that. And I'm like, oh my God, like, well, I'm sorry. Like, I'll take the iPad back. I'm sorry to waste your time.
Oh,
Tore into me like I was showing like second year student work. But then, similar to your situation, 2 weeks later, I get a call from Disney. Hey, are you available?
wow.
So it's like, it's at that point I realized, oh, this is just somebody's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that and that goes to anybody that is getting a portfolio review. You might wholeheartedly disagree with every word coming out of that person's mouth, or it might be the truth that you need to hear. But in some cases, if you get a follow-up email from a completely different company that's like, oh my God, we love you, when can you start? Then you know you just got a bad review. So
Yeah.
but I'm glad it worked out for you.
I am too. I am too.
So because not for completely unbiased question, what was that first magic job like? How did that run for you? Because I'm sure you were super excited and like also nervous.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't say nervous because the thing is that since I had been doing like jobs throughout that 8 years of coming up, like I knew the routine of how you're supposed to create an illustration for a client. So it wasn't that part that I was really nervous about. It was making work good enough that I could get hired again and didn't make me and Donato look like fools. Because I think that's another thing that younger artists might not understand is if somebody, your senior, puts your name out there, it's your responsibility to do right by them.
Yeah.
Like you can't just feel like you're entitled to that because they didn't have to Donato didn't have to do what he did at all. He jump-started my professional career, but he didn't have to. He could have just not said anything to anybody and it would be no different for him, but he put his name on the line because when you get a recommendation from Donato about somebody, you take it serious. And so I felt like I had a responsibility to do right by that. And so it was really that pressure. But the good thing about me, and I think one of my best qualities, is the fact that I work very well under pressure. And I actually like working under pressure because it brings out the best in me. And so I was actually happy to have all of that. And I created a really, really good piece because I was like, I kept getting hired and I kept getting hired. So, and other opportunities popped up because of it. So, I actually am very happy about how that all turned out and all the pressure that I had, because otherwise I wouldn't have made such a good piece.
Absolutely. What year was that when you got your first piece?
2020.
2020. And this is also over the pandemic.
Yeah. Middle of the
What a year.
yeah, pretty much right when the pandemic started.
Wow.
Wow.
Is when I got my first pieces.
And we started the same year.
Was that when
Started
you
with
started there?
Magic. Yeah, January 2020. I got
No way.
my
Because I think
email
Sarah
from
Finnegan also
Zach.
started that same year too.
Hmm.
There's a couple of us that all started at the same time.
Yeah, Magic babies.
Yeah,
Magical.
pretty much.
That's your magic cohort. The pandemic magic cohort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jarel, you paint in oils, right? Do you do all your magic cards in oils or?
The vast majority. They're like the Universe Beyond stuff, like the Lord of the Rings stuff and Fallout and all those IPs. You can't do digital. I mean, you can't do those traditionally, so I do those digitally. But the other ones, pretty much every other Magic card I do is traditional in oils. Yep.
You said you can't do those IPs traditionally. Why is that?
You can't. It's some in the it's in the contract.
Oh, weird.
You can't, like, we don't get artist proofs from those. We
Yeah.
can't sell prints,
Oh, wow.
play mats. We can't do anything. Like, all you can do is make art for that.
For the job and
And
nothing
that,
else.
yeah, for the job. Now they do pay more, but it's like, I mean, it's like little probably over double the fee that you get for a regular card, but you can't really do anything with it afterwards. And I always hear, like, when I would go to shows and stuff, they would ask me, "Oh, you got artist proofs of Smog?" I'm like, "No, they don't give us artist proof for those." And they're like, "No," they're always so upset about it.
Oh.
And I think that's something they should change, honestly, because it's that's a whole nother advertisement arm that they could use for it. But I don't think it's necessarily Magic. I think it's the
It's
other
not.
IPs that don't want that to be shared.
Yeah,
So
it's legally it's a
yeah,
whole thing, so that's why.
yeah.
Because
So
otherwise
like,
Wizards would definitely let you sell your art and sell the originals and sell it as whatever you need to sell it as. So yeah, it's just because it's not our IP that we're working with.
right. So
Don't quote
like,
me on that. I'm not speaking as an official spokesperson of Wizards right now or anything like that. It's just my understanding. Had to clear that up.
yeah. I mean, that's just how the business goes sometimes.
Yeah.
But I like taking them because, well, I get to work on IPs I wouldn't otherwise. Like, I got to do small. Like, I'm
That's
cool.
so cool.
You know what I mean? Like, I got to do a lot, like, there and back again. Like, I got to do monumental parts of Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. So, and like, because they're digital, I can pump them out really fast. So I look at them as more of like a quick check type thing. Like, when you do a regular Magic card traditionally, I can't take as many because, I have to paint them traditionally, like dry time and all that kind of stuff. So I can only do like 2 or 3 of those. And then I have to wait like a year before I can sell the paintings to actually get anything and whatnot. But with those, I could take like 5, 6 at a time because I could just pump those out a lot faster digitally. So I kind of use it. I know, like, other traditional artists don't really like doing it because they can't do anything with it afterwards, but I actually like it because I can get like a faster turnaround with the money part.
Yeah.
What's your average turnaround time for a digital versus a traditional piece?
I would say digital, maybe 2 sessions, and the sessions really, it's probably 2 full days
So like
digitally.
16 hours.
About, yeah.
It's pretty fast.
But traditionally, it's a little different. It's a little harder to break those down into hours. So I usually just say the days with those because not every day is the same. Some days it's like 2 hours, another day it's like 6. So usually with traditional paintings, I can get most cards done anywhere between 3 to 5 days.
Wow, it's still really
So,
fast.
And so
yeah.
fast.
I've been able to I've been fortunate to be able to do a project on the side where I really learn how to get my process down really fast because I've been doing a comic that's completely oil painted.
Wow.
And I started that literally the same year that I started working for Magic in 2020. And I've been doing that since then. And I'm on issue 4 now.
Wow.
And I think the first issue was like 28 pages. The second issue was 25. Third was 20. And this fourth one is 20. So because I've been working on that comic traditionally in oil paint, I've been able to, my brain just figured out how to work faster to get it all done. And so I've been able to translate that into my commercial work. And that's why I'm able to pump out paintings like within 3 to 5 days now. And like the quality is the same.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been really a good experience being able to do that.
3 to 5 days. That's
Eric is like, I
amazing.
can't imagine.
I can't. It takes me 2 full weeks to get a magic card done.
Wow.
Really?
Like, no lie. I'm like,
Wow.
yeah, that is just painting time. That's not prep. That's not reference gathering.
Wow.
That's
And it's all one,
kidding.
not juggling between.
oh, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, are you?
Wow.
We're gonna have to.
also a
We're gonna have
dad?
to talk.
My goodness. I didn't realize I was doing it that much
You're
fast.
very
I
fast.
figured that's just how you had to be.
Oh man.
I mean, you did also do 70 cards in a year for a project, so
That's true. I just figured like in order to get like all the work done, like you kind of had to do it that way. But I mean, everybody's different. But it's interesting hearing like because usually when I tell people they always have the same face, they're like, that can't be real. And then when I went to the fantasy workshop, and I got the angel piece in and whatnot that I was working on, and they're like, how did you finish a painting? I'm like, it's not done, but like it just looked finished.
it was getting pretty close, Jarel.
No, I literally worked on it for like I think I had 2 more sessions. I worked on it when I got back home. I mean, they weren't like long sessions, but it was maybe like 5 hours for one, and then like 2 hours for the next one. But yeah, at the fantasy workshop, I was able to do that painting, and then I did 2 miniature paintings. And I was, I don't know.
There was no way I was going to be able to concentrate on that, John, when I was there. Like, I was so distracted by all the socialization and stuff. But
yeah,
you the whole time, you were so locked in as well. You were very focused. Like, even when I came to bother you in the painting room, you're like, okay, cool. But you weren't like trying to hang out. You were actually like finishing that piece, which was pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, I think it's because I had been there before. Like I was there before, like last year. And, well, it wasn't last year because they didn't have it last year, but the year before that, the last one that they had, I was there for that one, and it was a lot more socializing that I did that year.
That makes sense.
And then I was like, I kind of want to get this done this year, or at least get it to a point where I can not have like something in between, because I don't like something when it's in between and I gotta travel with it. Yeah. So I wanted to get it in and dry. And then because I also had to leave early.
Yeah.
Because it was my wife's birthday the next day. Because I left on Thursday because my wife's birthday was Friday. And I was like, we just got married. I don't have the cachet to be like, I won't be gone. Like it's not gonna work. She wouldn't have it.
You gotta be there.
And I don't blame her either. So, I think that's why I was more locked in. If I had the entire week, I think I probably would have been more chill and walked around more like I did the first time. But yeah, I was like, I needed to get it done.
It looks awesome, the piece. So you finished it, right? Is it posted online?
Yeah. I posted it maybe a couple days ago. Or maybe it was yesterday.
I missed it.
It's recent.
Oh, if it was yesterday, that makes sense, because I was trying not to be online. Yeah, that's awesome. It was a really cool piece, and I just love the way it was coming out. Like as soon as I would walk in to the oil painting room, I'm like, oh, these are the people who are like, they are here. They're here for keeps. Like this is crazy. Like I'm just like it was like you and Carly Milligan, and just it was some amazing people in that room. Um, and it was just incredible to see it all unfold. It really makes me want to do oil painting, like actually get back into it again. It's been a long time since I've explored oils.
Oh
Um,
yeah, there
yeah.
ain't nothing like it. I've
Mhm.
tried a whole lot of mediums, and it's just like nothing like it. Although it's funny because I actually wasn't very good at it when I was first introduced to it, but after, I guess all the years of me refusing to be told that I should give it up. It was another thing that happened to me in art school is when I was really trying to get good at oil painting. The one thing that people always told me is that maybe you should use a different medium. Maybe you should use acrylic or something. Maybe you should do this. Maybe you should switch what you're doing because it's not working. And I remember being pissed about it. And I think I cried that day, if I remember correctly, because I was just like, no one likes what I'm doing. And it wasn't like I was trying really hard. And so one thing is like I get mad, and then that's when I like either when I get mad or stressed is when I do my best work. So then I ended up making like a piece, and then we turned it in. I turned it in for like critique and whatnot. And people were like, whose piece is this? Like no one knew who it was. And then I raised my hand when they asked who piece it was. And they're like, this is like a completely different paint. Like, it's not even the same artist. How is that possible? I was like, well, y'all made me mad. You shouldn't it
The
didn't work
amount of
that way.
artists
So
that
then I was
runs
like,
away.
yeah, I can actually do oil painting. So I stuck with it from then on. But yeah, there's nothing like oil painting for me.
Yeah, that stubborn spite that gets artists to do the things that no one ever thought they could do is really
Yeah.
impressive to see the power of that. It's something that always should be harnessed, I think. It's always great.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, that's awesome.
Like this.
Oh, it's so good.
So let me ask you a more technical question. Like,
All right.
what are you using to speed up the drying time
Ah, okay.
in
Yeah.
order for you to
So
be knocking things out in 3 to 5 days?
Yeah, so normally what I use two different things. So when I'm getting the initial, well, I'm just trying to fill in the space, I use liquid oleo pasta. I use that. And what I do is I mix that into the white, and then I use regular liquid and mix that into the black. And then the way that I have my palette set up, it's kind of like a Zorn palette. So everything touches either white or black. So everything dries pretty much the next day.
That's
And so, but usually what ends up happening is it takes me maybe 2 days to fill in the space.
Mm,
So maybe yeah, 2 to 3 days to fill in the space. If it's a more complicated painting, it takes me about 3 days to fill in the space. And after that, I switched to another medium by M. Graham. It's called Walnut Alkyd Medium. And it's kind of like liquid, but it doesn't dry as fast. So it allows me to work. And it's really good for glazing too. So it allows me to work the area and really refine it. But it still dries the next day. Well, maybe sometimes it might take an extra day depending on, the time of year, but most of the time it's dry the next day. So that's what allows me to really get them done so fast.
got it. Got
Yeah.
it. And saying you're on canvas, you're not having any issues with it being tacky afterwards?
No, not really. Uh, I think it might be because I don't really paint all that thick. Like I'm a pretty thin painter. I'm trying to work on that, but that's what the oleo pasto is for. So I can really develop my paint thickness. and stuff like that without it taking forever to dry. Because usually, like, the thicker that you put it down, the faster it tends to dry. So sometimes, like, the lighter paint or the thicker paint is dry before the thinner passages. So it works pretty well. And I think because I paint so thin, it doesn't really get tacky. It just kind of, like, I guess, sinks in a little bit into the canvas, and so it doesn't really move or anything like that, which is really nice for me because I like to layer. And that's another thing too, because I like to layer, I need something that dries really fast, because I like the glazing and all that, the effects that you can get, and all that kind of stuff. And if it takes 3 days for it to dry, I'd never get it done. I don't have enough patience for that either.
Yeah, so for anybody that's not aware, because I know a lot of students ask about what mediums do you use, what, solvents and all that stuff. Liquid oleo pasto is it's like liquid. It has the consistency of Vaseline.
Mm-hmm.
And I use it sparingly, a little drop.
Oh yeah, you don't need a lot.
You don't need a lot, but I thin that down with Gamsol and coat whatever area or oil in or oil out, whatever you want to call it, and paint into that oleo pasto wash, and it seizes up. I typically only use it for translucent colors, that phthalos, things like that, or whites, things like that I know are going to take days to dry if I don't use it. But where you have the focus to knock it out in 3 to 5 days, I forget to use the oleo pasto. And then I'm like, shit, this thing is still wet. Like, God damn it. And I can't do anything about it at that point. So I just thought it was good to ask you that. All right, cool.
Yeah, the process videos that you have on Instagram are very illuminating, because you have a very efficient process. The way that a lot of people work is that they like roughen the whole thing first in like underpainting and like have all the full foundation in paint before they even start layering. You just kind of go at it, which is insane to watch. I'm just like, I don't understand how you're just figuring out colors like this on the spot. I just don't get it.
Oh, it did not start that way, believe me. That's from over a decade of trying. Like, so how I used to paint is that I would do an underpainting, like an umber on underpainting.
Yeah.
And then I would put color on top of that. But over time, I'm not really sure how it happened. It kind of just progressively, it was just like a natural progression of things. So I would have a detailed underpainting, and then I would kind of just glaze colors on top of it. But over time, the underpainting became less refined, and I became more reliant on just going directly into color until I got to the point where I'm like, let me just try to just do it in full color. Because it was like, at that point, I wasn't really even doing an underpainting. At some point, I just stopped really doing an underpainting. I was just doing it in Prematura. So I was just putting a brown wash over it. And because I had the drawing already there, like transferred. So I was like, I know what's there. So I know how it's supposed to, at least in general, go, like the lighting and stuff like that. So I think that I guess it was just, I had done enough in grisailles and umber underpaintings to understand value enough to where I can combine the two. And even though it is in full color, I still have a value centric mindset while I'm doing it. So it's not like I'm going full color, really. It's like, well, I said before, like I use like a Zorn palette. So I have like So when I initially put in the colors, I have white, yellow ochre, cadmium orange, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, and black. So it's pretty much a Zoran palette, but I just added the oranges because
Yeah.
I don't want to mix it. So I just put them on the palette for a shortcut. And so that's kind of what I use for all of the initial block ends. And so it's more, to me, it feels more like a value palette, because the way I arrange them is kind of like a value color strings. So I have a color string for purple, a color string for blue, which is really just gray. And then I have a color string for yellow, a color string for two color strings for orange, and a color string of red. And that's how I have my palette laid out. It's very, very clean.
So you're
It's
pre-mixing
systematic.
your
Yeah.
palette according to value.
Yes.
So do you have multiple brushes per swatch or per?
Oh no, I'm not that technical.
Okay.
Not that technical. I just need a clean palette. Like I
Okay.
can't do, I tried doing the open palette thing for a lot of years, like kind of like how Donato would do it, like a mud palette. I tried those. I tried many different ways of doing it, and that's just the one that works for me. My mind needs a system
Yeah.
and a consistent one so that I don't have to think about how I'm going to mix color. I don't need to think about temperature, especially at that point in that stage of the painting. So I still take it in steps. It's just the step is like combined, like the value in color. So it's like rudimentary color is how I think about it. So I lay all those colors out like that. So I'm still going at it with value, but I have colors associated with the value. So I don't have to think about what value that is. I already know what value it is. Oh, this needs to be darker. This needs to be lighter. This needs to be warmer. This needs to be cooler. So if I need to go warmer on something, I just go up a level. If I need to go cooler, I go down a level. If I need something lighter, I go left. If I need something darker, I go right. So to me, it's a very logical process. I'm just trying to, when it comes to a finished painting, I'm just trying to execute it. I don't need to do all these experiments and all that stuff. No, I ain't got time for that. Like I need to get this thing done. So for me, whatever frees my mind up to just execute it, that's what I do. So I try to streamline my process as much as possible. I mean, I can experiment when I get the whole thing in, and that's usually what I end up doing is I'll lay out more colors after the initial pass of getting everything in. I let that dry, usually takes a day or the next day. And then I'll go in, I'll like oil the whole thing out, and then I'll go in, and that's when I start laying out new colors. That's when I put like phthalo blue in there, or ultramarine, or quinacridone magenta, like more saturated colors.
Yeah.
Then I start putting those on there. But because I already have a solid base, I don't have to worry about really what the value is. I already know that that's there. I might have to adjust some things, but the overall effect is already in place. So it frees me up mentally to do other things like put in certain textures or put in different design elements, like detailed stuff. So like I like to break my stuff down in a very predictable system so that I don't have to like fiddle.
Yeah.
So I just straight up execution.
That's awesome.
So are you storing these? Do you have a container for your palette?
No. Well, see, this is a weird thing that I do that I don't see any artist do, is that after each painting session, I scrape the whole thing clean.
Wow.
Oh wow.
I never save my palette from day to day.
So you're pre-mixing your palette per day.
Yeah. Every day.
How long does that take?
About 5 minutes, maybe.
So you're premixing just what you need for whatever passage you're on, not for the whole painting, but whatever.
Oh
you're
no,
writing
no,
for.
it's for the whole painting because it's the same. Well, see, the thing is that it's the same palette every time.
Yeah.
Like it never
Okay.
changes. So it's, or at least, well, let me put it this way. I make the same palette for the first pass, and then with the color streams. So that palette always stays the same. So however long it takes me to get the painting in for that first layer, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 days, I use the same palette for that. Now, when the whole thing is in and I'm going in for like the details and all the revisions and stuff like that, I won't use that palette really anymore, or that setup. It's more of like, it turns into more of an open palette type situation. So like I'll have all the different colors out, like, how you line all the colors up. And then in the middle, I'll have, well, this is what I've been doing recently. I'll have like a string of gray. And so I then have below each color, I'll have that color mixed with white. So a tint of each of the colors I have on the palette. And in the center of the palette is a string of gray. And so what I typically do then is like, I take the color that I want, and then if I mix it with gray, then to make a tone, I'll do that. Or if I just want to put the color directly on the surface, I'll do that. Because then what I typically do, because it's glazing, I do like, I'll mix on the board from there instead of like on the palette. Because I already have the colors, the general colors I need on the board already. So I don't need it on the palette anymore. So it then shifts a little bit. It's usually easier to show than it is to talk about.
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay, all right.
How many values are you working with per color? Just out of curiosity.
Let's see. I guess I think it's 4 or 5. Let me see.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 4 for most of them, and I think a couple of them are 5.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing it sounds like you're doing a condensed down version of the Riley palette.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Neat. Very neat.
I'm so jealous of the ability to mix on the board because I paint with acrylics and I'm like, God damn it, blending is so freaking hard and like everything dries darker. So it's just like trying to color match and blend takes so much time. But this makes me want to try oils. So.
Oh,
I feel
yeah.
like your style, Mia, would be suited really well for oils.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm intimidated by it. I feel like my whole life I've always thought oils is like what the masters use, and I'm just not good enough to do it. But
Mia,
Good grief.
it's a mental block I've always had, and yeah.
the amount of times I have to throw you into the sun for thinking of yourself like this. I have to do it again when I see you at Gen Con.
No, but I love this idea though of doing an underpainting that's both temperature and value at the same time. That sounds so practical, and yeah, I just loved hearing all this. So I'm also dying to hear about your hand painted comic. Is that, if you don't mind the segue here, but is this a personal project or where did this idea come from?
No, it's not a personal project. It's actually so when I started working with Magic, the person that bought the first Magic card that got released, the oil painting, he was gonna start a comic book company. And so he was like, do you want to work on this comic book thing? I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd love to work on it because I wanted to do comic stuff too. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. So he already had like a story that he was working on with a partner of his. And I was like one of the first people to come on board for the project. And at first I was like, yeah, it's going to be just a normal like comic, like, with the inks and stuff like that. But then he asked, can you do like your painted stuff on the comic? I was like, huh, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, that sounds really cool. Because one thing I had always had an idea of doing that. Like, you know what Alex Ross did
Yeah.
with Kingdom Come and stuff like that. And I was like, you don't really see a lot of that, like illustrative, like painted comic work. Like you don't see that very often. I was like, I want to do that one day. And it just so happened that it was the same time I was working with Magic. So yeah, he started the comic book company. It's called 24/7 Comics. His name is Carl Cho. And you know, he's at this point, he's created other IPs and stuff like that. So it's not just my comic. He has one that he's worked on already that's I think it's out now. It's called Evermind. Let's see, the artist is Sean Chen.
Mm-hmm.
And like he's really dope. So like I think they have like 7 or 8 different IPs they got going now. And because mine is taking so long, because it takes me about a year to actually finish each issue. So it's gonna be a while still, but you know, yeah, it's actually, you know, on a independent comic book company. So it's really dope. It's really dope. I'm hoping to share it soon at some point.
Is that like a blend of like, would you say your anime influence and your painting together in one thing, or not as much?
It might be. Yeah, it does have a little bit of that in it. Yeah, because my comic stuff does grab more from the anime side of things. As far as compositions are concerned, like certain movements and stuff like that. But the style in and of itself is kind of like my illustrated stuff. So it has the style of my illustrated stuff, but it does have a little bit of a feel of anime, I think, at least.
So cool. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm always like, because I know like a couple of friends, because I told them about it and they ask me every year, so is the comic out yet? I was like, no, I'm still working on it. It's like, what issue are you on? It's like every year the number goes up, but there's 6 issues. So I have to finish this one and then 2 more. So I'm at least more than halfway at this point. So it's getting there.
Are there any larger personal projects that you want to do for yourself or that you are working on for yourself right now?
There's a Star Wars series that I kind of started by accident, really, because it wasn't supposed to be a series. I always wanted to make Star Wars stuff, and I have like here and there, but I started a Star Wars series of like the first one I did was of a Sith, Dark Ruinous. I brought it to a LuxCon last year, and it gave me an idea of doing a Sith, a Jedi, and then like a triptych. So it was going to be the Sith on the left, Jedi on the right, and on the center is going to be like the Force. And so I made the Sith one. I have the drawing for the Jedi one, and I already made the drawing for the Force one. I just don't know when I'm actually going to get to them. It's been a long time since I've actually done personal projects. I've gotten so used to just doing client stuff that doing personal projects is a little weird.
Yeah,
it's my own art direction. Like I don't know how I feel about that.
self-directing.
Yeah, like I'm good at following orders. Oh, you want me to do this? Yeah, I'll do that. But if it's like, oh, I get to figure out everything, I was like, I don't know about that.
It's like more decisions. Let's do
Yeah, it's like all these decisions I have to make now. I was like, how do I know if it's actually right or not, kind of thing.
Oh,
It's balancing that. But it's been fun though to actually spend time on a piece with no deadline. That's really nice.
yeah.
So I can really like hone in on things and really experiment some more. Cause doing client work, you don't really get to experiment like that. You just need to get the thing done as quickly as possible. And personally, I like getting my work in early, so I get paid faster. So like I don't really like going up to deadlines and stuff like that. So I try to make the commercial work as quick as possible so I can get paid as quick as possible. But doing personal work is nice because I actually get to slow down and just really focus on different aspects of the process, like concepting and maybe like certain design elements that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Try to expand maybe like the reference that I use or like learn a new skill while working on the piece and stuff like that. So it's been a good experience. It's just new for
Yeah.
me.
Have you tried applying 3D or maquettes or anything like that? I know some magic art artists really go deep dive into ZBrush or clay and making different creatures and things like that for their paintings.
I've tried that. I know a little bit of 3D and I have done maquettes in the past. And I'm I'm not, it doesn't really fit me though. Like at least the process that I like. I do use action figures though sometimes. Those I like. Because because I'm not really a fan of shooting reference. At least like posing myself and stuff like that. Because I'm free. I'd rather be free than pay someone when I can do the same pose. And I think I have a good enough grasp on anatomy to change things. But using action figures has been quite fun for me because I get to light it and all that kind of stuff. And I don't have to get all of this extra equipment, just a desk lamp, maybe like some fills for different colors and stuff like that. And I can do it that way. Helps a lot. Uh, and I think it's also part of the enjoyment. I think if I have too much reference or if it's too specific, I don't have as much fun with it. Uh, there's a part of making stuff up that I enjoy. And I think if it's this is me personally, if it's too much or if it's too directly linked to it, like I'd rather have like a ref sheet of stuff that's similar, or it can be the same pose or the same lighting, but maybe not on the same thing. Like, so I have the figure pose that I want, and then the lighting of something else. And then I'll combine the two in like on the drawing or on the painting. Like for me, that works better than if I had like how Howard Lyon does. Like he makes these mock-ups that are pretty much the exact painting and he just translates it. Like when I do that, I lose my creative part because even though I like having the efficiency of the palette and the painting and stuff like that, I still want to have some fun and not knowing something. And I think that's where that comes in is like the using reference on more of a loose basis, I guess. So I
Being
do
more
use it, but
spontaneous.
if I use it, it's sparingly, at least with the maquettes and stuff like that.
Got it. So you like to be more spontaneous in your illustration than have like a whole GPS kind of roadmap. Like, because like Howard and I kind of work exactly the same. Like I know before I even mix up my palette exactly what my painting is going to look like. It's just copy the printout or copy
Yeah, I can't. And
comic.
I've tried that. I really have tried it, and the result is really nice. I really like the result, but I never really had a whole lot of fun. Now, if I do something like that, because one thing that I stopped doing for a while was doing color studies because I wanted to be more spontaneous with that. But I started getting back into it again because I want to orchestrate stuff a little bit more. But my color studies are always pretty loose. So it's like it's a general feel, but it's not very specific. So I think that's kind of how I like to work with references in general, like the references overall is like it can be a general reference, but not a specific one. Because I like having the fact that I have a pretty good visual library to make stuff up that. So I guess I'm like kind of like Jeff Miracola like that because he does something like that. Like he'll use reference, but it's loose, and he likes to make stuff on the fly, and that's kind of how I like to do it because I think it comes from the I think that's part of the anime background too. Is I would just draw stuff like when I was a kid. I didn't start using reference for anything until I was in art school. So I like a large part of my artistic upbringing was just making stuff up from my head.
Yeah.
So that's where I find the joy of art is to make stuff up. So it just kept on after I started to use reference. But then I figured out how I can use reference that still benefited making the work better while also maintaining my joy of actually making the art.
Yeah. You mentioned JP Target, and he and I and Dan DeSantos all went to the same college, and they really beat that into us, like reference gathering, like get reference for everything. And if you go back, if you go and dig back far enough and look at some of JP's earliest works, like
his book covers,
his old book covers,
yeah,
that stuff there's a polar opposite difference from what he does today, and that is by choice. He decided at a certain point, I don't want to go digging up or going to do photo shoots for some Avon model or something like that. I want to just sit here and paint from my imagination and just let it flow naturally out of me. And that's what he does. And he gets a fantastic result.
Yeah.
But he's coming from a point where, like I said earlier, it's a choice. It's not a crutch. He's not saying I don't want to use reference because I don't know how or because I don't want. It's a choice to do it the way he's doing it, and the results speak for themselves. And he has a stellar career. So whatever works for you and gets you the results consistently that you want, then fantastic. The Zorn palette seems to be working out well for you. So I love the breakdown, the value breakdown that you described to us. I'd love to see a photograph of your palette one day. I'm gonna just have to text you like when you're working on something. Like I just need a picture. I just want to see what you're working on.
We should do a reel.
It's very clean.
Wow.
I remember like at the workshop, people would like look at it. It's like, you paint with that? I'm like, yeah, y'all don't. Like, I don't know how people paint with like stuff all over the place. I'm like, how do you get anything done? Like my brain doesn't work that way. So yeah.
I was taught in school to paint with a 9-value pre-mixed palette. So you have your values of gray and a color string. Every color for the entire color wheel. I could pre-mix every color along that same value string from light to dark. But like I asked you earlier, but I had to get a specific brush for every single value.
Oh my gosh.
So when I wanted a mid-tone gray or a mid-tone red or whatever, and I needed to control that chroma, I had a had a brush for that. You pick up the brush, you put down the brush.
Oh
And
my
it's
goodness.
That takes so much
That sounds like
discipline. I could
torture.
not.
but
I can't do that.
that is a whole other thing. So
Well, this has been great. It's been so
This is
inspiring
awesome.
listening to your journey and just the persistence, honestly, like of the 8 years of just trying to get your skills up. I relate to that a lot, but just the tenacity. I think a lot of people need to hear that right now.
Yeah, definitely.
And seeing what
Definitely.
you got to.
Yeah, it harkens to truly how much effort and work goes into this career and how dedicated you have to be in order to keep at it, even when things aren't working out immediately, to to know that eventually they will. And like it's it's so serendipitous that you were ready to quit after 8 years of trying so hard, and then that's when everything locked into place. It's
Yeah,
just yeah, I don't know. I don't the universe is so interesting in that way.
yeah, that's how it works. That's how it works. You just have to put the time in, and then eventually it will work out. You just have to keep it moving, I guess. Like, just know if it's like what you called to do, then that's. I think that was the other part too. Like, there was nothing else I was gonna do in my life. It was gonna be this. Like, it had to be this because I didn't enjoy anything else. So
Yeah,
I think that's another thing too.
absolutely. Yeah, when I was scrolling around on your Instagram, I had seen a comment that was like, "You are a funnel for our ancestors," and I was like, "Yeah, that's powerful." I was like, "That's powerful stuff."
Oh yeah, I saw that too. I was like, it's always strange when I get like praise like that because I was so used to not hearing anything from anybody, and then
Mm,
you from your stuff being ignored to your stuff being praised, and it seems like overnight almost, even though
yeah,
it wasn't an overnight process. Like literally, people went from not caring to loving your stuff, like, and it's just I'm really grateful for it, but it's also like a little weird too. Like I still don't really know how to feel about it. Like I'm really honored that they feel that way about it. It's just like I'm just the person. I'm just the dude. That's it.
you're just a dude, but you're also an artist who has done some incredible work. So don't take it for granted that you've worked really hard to be where you are right now. So you're not like not everybody can do that. Not everybody can do what you have done over the course of years. So just like so know that about yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do want to be an inspiration to people and
You
and
are
and to
already. That's
help,
already happening.
yeah, and to really help people like get to, because I do a little bit of mentoring here and there for like other artists that are trying to get in and artists that got in, and whatnot. And like it's always really rewarding to like give them something that makes it click and it just like inspire people. And then they're like, man, you're always cool. I'm like, yeah, like this thing is hard, man. Like I don't want you to struggle like I struggle. I want you to take 8 years to get through this. Like, no, I want you to get through it much faster than I did. Like, there's no point in to have people like knowing that you could help them along their journey to speed up the process so that they don't have to go through what you went through. I think, you know, we have to give back to the people that come afterwards.
Yeah,
Like,
I wholeheartedly believe that.
yeah, there's so very few Black illustrators that focus on sci-fi fantasy traditional painting
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
yeah.
In the world, a lot of us are peppered throughout comic books, animation, mostly children's books,
Mm-hmm.
but I know there are people up and coming that see your website, they see your magic cards, they see you as the face behind that stuff, and they go, "Oh, see, Ma, there's somebody else. There's somebody doing it." The same way you were able to tell your parents Same way I was
Yeah.
able to tell my parents. We all looked at JP. Like,
You're like, look at Tim.
that's the dude.
But now you can be somebody else's JP Tarjay.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think about.
Yep.
Worldwide, man. Needle in a
Yep.
haystack. So you earned your spot.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
Yes, you did.
All right. Well, that's what I got. That's I don't know how to wrap this up.
Oh, I'll do it. I'm good at this. Okay, this is my bag. Let's go. All right. Thank you everybody so much for joining us. Jarel, this was an awesome conversation and we really love talking with you and understanding not only your journey, but your process and how you actually go about your paintings, because it's seriously wild to see the process videos. So everybody who's listening, please go on Jarel's Instagram and website and follow him, his amazing art and his journey. It's really some wonderful stuff. And if you enjoyed this episode and enjoyed the content that we make, please feel free to smash that like button. Go ahead and subscribe. Leave a comment, participate in the live chat, and thank you everybody who's done so. Every single little bit does a lot for our channel, so please feel free to add support if you would like to. But until next time, well, I'll talk to you later. Thank you so much. Bye.
And those time lapses on his Instagram, those aren't even time lapses. That's just real time video of Jarel just
Don't
3
lie
to
to them,
5
Eric.
days.
Doing a painting in 2 or 3 days.
Don't
3 to 5 days.